All right, folks, I'm getting ready for work. We can see the TT is waiting for the spring. I'm going to go over to Reddit for a topic. This would be a good kind of video to go make and film at my computer so I could show you the article that is referenced. But I'm literally going to be driving a car, and that's going to be not impossible, but that would be extremely unsafe. So I'm not I'm not going to try to do anything with an article at the same time, but I wanted to talk about it. This was actually on the Primogens subreddit, and so someone submitted this, and it's AI related. I thought it would be interesting to talk through. I wanted to think about some different perspectives here, and I wanted to start this conversation off by saying that one of the things that I really try to do in my videos or when I'm talking through things with people is I really try to look at things from different perspectives, and especially if I feel like I have a strong bias for like one side of the story, I try to do my best to make sure that we can at least explore the other side. So I'm bringing that up right now because I want you to think about that as I go through this video. I'm trying to challenge you to kind of think about things in different ways. I'm not here to like debate like something is, an absolute truth or not. It's not my intention. My intention is to get you to think about things in perhaps different ways than you are currently, just to keep an open mind. So the post that was made into Prime's subreddit was referencing this blog article that someone wrote. An author commented back and was all excited. Their article got shared, which is cool. And it's around like AI is making developers lazy. And I think immediately, probably, 99% of people that are watching, listening to this are like, hell yeah, totally agree. Like AI is screwing us. So let's keep going. The sort of way that the article is written, I only skimmed through it, so I'll be totally transparent that like I didn't go do an in-depth analysis. That's why I was saying I think this would be a really good one to do at my computer. In fact, now that I'm saying that out loud again, I'll probably make a follow-up on my main channel, Dev Leader, and do like a polished, edited video where I go through the article, give some thoughts. So this will be kind of a precursor to that. This is my on-the-fly thinking through this stuff, and if you're interested, I'll have that up on my main channel, Dev Leader, and then you can check that out if you want like a more refined version of this kind of brain dump. So the author goes on to talk about how how they've been using AI, and basically they become super dependent on it to the point where they were saying like, I won't even look at a stack trace anymore. Like I need AI to go analyze it for me. It's no longer like, hey, AI is like this nice thing that can help. It's like they get upset when AI doesn't give them a good answer because they're so reliant on it. They talked about like it taking away some of the joy of programming because they're relying on AI so much. So like that's a big part of the article, just how dependent they become on AI. And the framing, in my opinion, is not a positive one. If it's not obvious, it's not, hey, AI has made my life so much better and so much more productive. It's like it's almost, I don't know if the right word is afraid, but like I've become so dependent. Like this isn't good. I need to change. This isn't heading in the right direction. I don't think it was a comment. I think it's in the article. They said AI is not making us 10x developers, it's making us 10x dependent on AI. And I thought that was an interesting statement. So we'll maybe kind of revisit that. And then towards the end of the article, they're talking about like this action plan that they're coming up with, and just some different ideas they're proposing to essentially kind of force themselves away from using AI all the time. So, and how you implement it. There's nothing here, man. Stop beeping at me. If you carve out a day of the week to not use AI, or you stop using AI for particular tasks more frequently so you can practice them. One of the things they pointed out was, I'm not going to use AI for things that like I haven't done before. bunch of different strategies that they were kind of thinking through, which I thought was, interesting. I think it's a good reflection, because it's like, these are the things that AI is literally doing for me. And that's kind of why I wanted to say, their comment was like, it's not making us 10x developers, it's making us 10x reliant. But, if you're I'm just going to interject with this. If you're it's kind of a thought, right? If you're relying on AI to do these things, is it because it's helping you do them more effectively? Like, for me, I certainly wouldn't be relying on AI or anything to do something for me if it wasn't going to give me some benefit, right? And maybe what they're trying to say is, it's not even doing better than they could at some of these things, but maybe what's happened is that they're using AI for these things. It happens to be faster, maybe not better, and it's affording them more time to go do other things, which is perhaps what's happening. So the difference there is like, I'm going to use AI to do this task because AI is better at it, versus I'm going to use AI to do this task. I might save some time on it. Maybe it's not better than I am at it, but it's, air quotes, like good enough, and I can go do other work. Both of those are possibilities, I think. Hello, it's a green light. This is a day of drivers already. The last video I made, I had someone on the highway that almost cut me off. Just like quite a circus today. Okay, so, oh man, there's a lot of flavor in that. Was not expecting that. So their article's interesting. I think it's a good read. I haven't written articles in just under a year now, but I like how they tell it. It feels like a story, right? Which is nice. Versus like a lot of articles I write are very technical, and it's like, here's a tutorial. It'll put you right to sleep, but there's some code you can copy and paste. So I thought, it was a good read, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to reflect on. So overall, sounds like their claim is like, we're relying too much on AI, and I have a strategy to help, that I'm going to try to help move away and be so reliant on AI. So on the surface, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? I think if this person's looking at how they're developing software, how AI is fitting in as a tool for them, if they don't like what's happening, then I think good reflection, right? Like, make some adjustments, and kind of see what fits for you, especially if you're feeling like, there's a couple things that stood out to me. Like, they're losing enjoyment for programming, I thought was an interesting one. I think, maybe a little bit more philosophically, when it comes to work and stuff, when you start losing enjoyment in what you're doing, I think that becomes kind of risky. Not going to get stuck behind that person. So, then you start going to work, you hate your job, you don't like what you're doing, it's not interesting, and now you got, 30, 40 years of this left? I don't think so. So, if you're starting to lose enjoyment, I think that's like an interesting, kind of trigger to think about. So that was one part. And then the other part seemed to be like, I'm less concerned about the reliance on, and I want to talk about this more. So less concerned about the reliance on and more about, are they finding that they're becoming worse as a developer? And that's a very general statement. I'm kind of saying it that way on purpose. But overall, as a developer, do they feel like they're becoming worse because they're relying on AI? And I wanted to kind of ask that to you as the viewer to think about for yourself, right? And it's on purpose, because as we talk through this, I want you to think through different angles of what this might look like. So I realize on the surface when I say that, I think some people might be saying, well, based on what this person was saying, yeah, they were talking about how their ability to debug, they're relying on AI to look through stack traces. They're using AI to refactor things. They're using AI. They're not practicing those skills anymore. Therefore, they are going to be worse. they will be worse. Like that person will be worse because they're not practicing those things, which I think is a totally fair way to look at it. And by the way, when I asked you that question, there isn't going to be like a universally right or wrong answer. There's not going to be a universal way that you can look at this question. I asked it because you will have a different way of interpreting what it means, and I want you to be able to think about that. So the other way that I look at this, though, is that if you're relying on these tools, and those tools are enabling you to be more effective, are you better or worse? So the difference here being you as the individual or you with a set of tools. And personally, I think that that's, and again, you can look at this different ways. This is my vlog, so you're going to hear my perspective on these things. I kind of see it split between those two things primarily. One is like if you're using tools to replace things you would be doing, you practice them less. Therefore, you as an individual may be getting worse at them because you are not practicing. However, leveraging the tool, and not always, especially because I've heard people say they can't use AI effectively for certain tasks. That's not here nor there necessarily. But if you're using AI and it's not making you more effective, like it's maybe like not the right tool. If it is making you more effective, then the net overall effect, would you make an argument that you are more effective as a developer? Okay, so that's how I'm looking at this scenario right now. So this is why when I read this kind of stuff and I, like I said a little bit earlier, I'm not saying this person's wrong that they want to start reflecting and changing some of their ways of developing. I think that's not for me to decide for them, right? Like at all. But what I think is really healthy is that they are doing this reflection. I think that's super cool. Hey, I'm noticing this about how I develop. This is a good gut check. Like maybe I'm going to try some things out, see how this feels. I think we should all be doing this kind of stuff, not like AI aside, right? Like, hey, I'm just going to pick another group of people that will probably get pissed off when I say this, but hey, like I started doing TDD and I actually find that I'm not effective at developing anymore. So like, I would say maybe you should go rethink that. Maybe you need to either go get better at TDD or drop it if it's not working for you, or drop it in the scenarios where it's not working effectively for you, right? But like, take this opportunity to refine how you do things, how you practice things, how you develop. So I think that's all healthy. The thing that I kind of wanted to focus on, though, is this reliance kind of concept. There's two parts I want to go over. The reliance part, because I think that's very interesting. And the other thing, if I have time, I want to get back into is how we learn. And to me, this is a fascinating part. I'm not an expert by any means on, like psychology of learning or anything like that. I just have my own experiences, and then I have my experiences that I've shared with like trying to help others be better software developers. So I don't have like a scientific or medical background or biological background in any of this stuff. Just as a heads up, I'm not trying to pretend like I do. On the reliance part, the reason I said a little earlier I'm not so concerned about this is because I've already seen this happen well before AI, I guess. And I haven't seen that be a problem. In fact, I've seen that just enable people to be better developers and get shit done. So to give you some examples, like before we had ChatGPT, what was everyone using? Say it with me. Stack Overflow. Okay, so we had this tool, we still do. We have Stack Overflow. You could be going to Stack Overflow and searching for your answer, and then copying and pasting code over, and then someone could make an argument, as soon as Stack Overflow's down, you can't code anymore. You're so reliant on it. Yeah, and when Stack Overflow's up, and it's up most of the time, I'm killing it. I'm doing awesome, right? Like I'm just giving you an example to think about. I want to challenge you to think through these things if they feel uncomfortable. So that's, again, why I'm delivering them in a way that might get you kind of being like, screw you, Nick, that doesn't make any sense. Like, think about it. Think about it with me. It's just a different perspective. IDEs, right? So like I program in C# and use .NET for effectively almost everything I do because I really like the ecosystem. I'm very comfortable in it. But one of the reasons that I'm so comfortable in it is because the tooling that surrounds it. I know a lot of people hate Visual Studio. I'm like very at home in Visual Studio. And in fact, if you ask me to go program C# and not have Visual Studio, I would feel like my thumbs are tied together. I've been programming for over 20 years, and if you said, Nick, you can't use Visual Studio, I need you to go build something, I would feel like what do I do? So I absolutely have an over-reliance on Visual Studio, on the Microsoft build tools for C# and .NET. 100% I have an over-reliance on this stuff. But I wouldn't sit here and then say, therefore, I'm a bad developer. Because when I go to develop things, I have those tools. Now, if you ask me to use another language, right? So if you said, Nick, I need you to go use Python to do this, the first thing that would be in my head is if I have to use another tool, like Python or another language, what are the comparable tools that would make me feel at home? Right? Like, what's the IDE that people use with Python? Because I'm not going to be programming it in Notepad. Right? I'm not going to be doing that. So what's the tool? Like, I want an IDE, I want a debugger, I want the tool so I can feel at home. Same thing if you pick a different language. When we're building Brand Ghost is the SaaS that I'm building outside of work for social media content sharing. And so I use this for all of my content creation. The front end is built with TypeScript. And we use VS Code for that. So again, familiar, it's close. But there's certain things that aren't set up like, I don't know why. We're using Next.js, and there's something to do with like how the debugger in our setup like isn't quite working. So when you go to debug, it's like I can't actually hit breakpoints, but I can do like console logging. And I'm like, oh man, like even that feels like I'm being crippled in my development, right? Like it's very much holding me back because every time I want to go debug something, I'm like, oh, I have to go figure out how to go, like how I'm going to have to think through this. So I have a reliance on a good debugger. So the reason I'm sharing these with you is because forget AI. The argument that we're hearing right now in this example is AI, like we're becoming too dependent on AI, which is a tool, okay? I would make the argument already, forget AI, that we're already too dependent on a lot of tools. But at the same time, like I'm not panicking about that. We have tools. That's why we have them. That's why you have a compiler. That's a tool. You're going to tell me that you're going to go hand assemble your stuff? And only real programmers will do that by hand because they don't use tools? Right? Like, my point is that if we have the tools available, I don't really have this fear of over-reliance because my entire developer existence has been relying on tools. The whole thing. It's just the tools are looking different now. So that's one of the challenges that I want to put to you is to think about it that way. Doesn't mean, I'm not telling you have to agree with me. By no means. You can absolutely disagree with that stance. Right? That's not my intention, is to tell you you must think about things in a different, like, you have to adopt this perspective. I'm just challenging you to try and look at it through that lens. That's all. And if you're like, hey, that was kind of neat, I don't like it, great, cool. Like, thank you for at least exploring that, because I think it's really important that we at least try. But that's the lens that I'm currently using when we talk about over-reliance on AI, at least in our development workflows. Okay, so that's the first part. We do still have time, and I wanted to talk about learning because I think that this is like I said, I'm fascinated by this, and I want to put another disclaimer in here. I'm fascinated by this because I probably have the same perspective that many of you do on this, but I'm desperately trying to challenge myself and think about it a different way because I'm super curious if it's going to unfold this way. So give me just a moment because apparently my mouth is dry. Okay. So And I have said this on video before, and I'm trying to adjust my stance to have a little bit more of an open mind. When it comes to learning and using AI tools, or learning in general, right, for software development, you'll hear people saying, learn fundamentals. You need to learn fundamentals. The language doesn't matter. The tech stack doesn't matter. Learn the fundamentals. And it's a great way to have a sweeping statement that is supposed to have a lot of impact, but then someone hears it who's very new to software development, and they go, great, what the hell do you mean? Okay. But I agree with the statement. I think you learn fundamentals. These are concepts that you can abstract, and then again, regardless of the language or the tech stack, if you understand the fundamentals of what you're doing, then you can go apply those to different languages, tech stack scenarios. So conceptually, absolutely makes sense to me. Now, one of the challenges with AI is that when people are leveraging it, okay, so you have new developers and they can go to ChatGPT and say, make me a something. I need a program that does whatever, or they are decomposing it. They're saying, I need a class or a function that can do whatever, make that for me. And they're getting the answers. What's happening is people are saying, well, then these individuals aren't getting stuck. They're not actually learning these things. They're just learning how to ask AI for the answer. Therefore, they're not going to be practicing the fundamentals. Therefore, they will be worse programmers. And roughly speaking, I mean, I'm kind of, blanket statement, putting words into everyone's mouths, but roughly speaking, this is kind of what I'm hearing. And I think for the most part, I have agreed with this, because like how I learned was you need to be building stuff. You need to get stuck. You need to be doing all this stuff. And if you're just asking someone for the answers, in this case, AI, hey, AI, give me the answer, what's happening is that you're not spending the time getting stuck. Because you have someone you can just turn to. I've literally made videos on a very comparable thing when I talk about interns. And I say, like, here's how to ask good questions. Go get stuck on something, try some things out, come back and ask. That's literally me telling you that from my perspective, to be a better developer, I think you need to get stuck and work through things. So I'm just trying to give you another example, right? That's truly has been my stance, because that is how I learned. That's how I've seen other people learn effectively. When you just are given answers, it's really difficult for you to kind of, what's the right way to phrase this? Like, not interpret, but like, I don't know, have those concepts like really register with you, because you didn't have to think through it. You just got the answer. So I think a lot of people are kind of taking this perspective. That's why AI seems kind of scary for people. Now, there's no, it's kind of a tangent, and I want to come back to the learning part. What I'm not trying to do in this conversation here is say that people can't use AI to go build things, like to put together whole products and services. I want to interview him for my main channel, but a friend of mine, I've talked about him in these vlogs before, would tell you today he's not a programmer, but was able to secure a contract building a platform for a company, and used AI for the entire thing. And it works, it's functional, looks great. And like, he would tell you today, I'm not a programmer. But he had AI essentially build all of the pieces, and he glued it together, and it works. And then he consulted with me to basically get feedback on like high level things, right? Like he's moving in some direction, I give him some feedback on that, and then he could reprioritize. He has done an absolutely amazing job and had zero programming skills before this, and would tell you today he doesn't. So I'm not saying that AI does not enable people to do that. Now, if you heard what I just said and you're like, yeah, but I bet his code is shit, like, I don't know, man. It might be, but he's working on it. Like, it's currently working, and he currently got a contract, and customers are currently happy. So it's really hard to argue with the results of it. Now, time will tell how scalable that is. Can he continue to build on it, right? We will see. But I'm not like abandoning him as he takes that takes that journey. So he'll have guidance. I'm not concerned for him. So the argument is not that AI can't enable others to go build things. It's not what we're saying. We're talking about the ability to learn. So would we say that this individual, did he learn by going through this? Now that he's pieced together a bunch of stuff, I would assume, and this is why I want to interview him, I assume he's learned a whole bunch. But did he learn the fundamentals? If I asked him, do you know why you're using a dictionary here versus an array? Or do you know what algorithm that is that you're using to go traverse that? You have to go, you're looking for the smallest element in this collection. Do you understand what's happening here? Why this is efficient? Or do you know why it put this thing that's called, underscore cache here? Do you know why that's there? I bet you some of these things, yes, and others, no. And he's like, no, I have no idea, but it's working, right? I'm making assumptions, or I don't know. My point is, I would assume that by going through this exercise, he learned some things, and other things that we might call fundamentals, he absolutely did not learn, or at least doesn't recognize that he's learned, which is interesting. Because the thing that I want to challenge us to think about, and this is hard for me to say because I don't believe it, but I'm curious, okay? So again, I'm saying this out loud so that when you hear me say it, you're going to be triggered by it because it triggers me, but I want you to know I am not even convinced of this yet, but it's a thought experiment that I'm trying to get myself to think through. And that is, do the fundamentals actually matter anymore? And another way to say that is the fundamentals that we think about today, the developers today have been saying, you have to learn fundamentals, you have to learn fundamentals. Do those fundamentals just change? Do they also evolve for the next wave of people that are building things, perhaps primarily with AI? Again, the tooling that they'll be using is completely different than what many of us learned with. So I'm very curious, and again, it's really difficult for me to say, does someone actually have to care about some of those details? Or did we just move an entire level of abstraction away from that, and they are truly no longer relevant to understand at the same level of detail that historically we would have said, you really got to know that. You really got to know that. Right? Again, hard for me to kind of stop, man. You're too noisy. Hard for me to kind of get behind that. This is just crazy. The crappy part is I press the button and it's disabled until I stop again. And then the parking sensor's back on. So I have to keep pressing it. But the point is that I truly wonder if given enough time, we will see. And this is the hard part about this, right? People have opinions about it. We're not going to know. We have no idea until we let some time go by and then we reflect on it, which is why I'm trying to challenge you to think about this in different ways. Will we find that as we go forward, people are learning how to build software differently, and the tooling has become so advanced that they can do so without having to learn the same sets of fundamentals that historically we've learned, and they're able to do a more effective job? And again, if your gut reaction is to start poking holes at it, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying that is my stance. I'm saying I'm curious about it. Because you might say, well, what happens when the AI puts together stuff and it doesn't work? And then they have to debug it. Yeah, maybe you ask the AI to debug it for you. Or what happens when it's spaghetti code and, it can't be worked on? I'm like, I don't know, the AI has to work on it. So can the AI navigate the spaghetti code? The code's not readable. Yeah, does it have to be readable to you? Because as long as the AI can make sense of it, does it matter? These are things that I'm genuinely curious about, because it feels so uncomfortable to think that they perhaps could radically change. I don't like the idea of it, right? Like, it makes me uncomfortable, but I'm trying to pay attention to this a lot because I spend a lot of time, not as much these days, like in my professional career, but like I spend a lot of time outside of work trying to help new software developers. And I'm trying to keep an open mind to this because as everything's changing around us, when I go to help people, like, hey, like, what language should I learn? How do I get started? I want to make sure that if I need to adjust what I'm saying because times are changing, that I don't become the person in 15 years that's like, oh no, like you have to go learn about pointers. And someone's like, literally, what the hell is a pointer? And I'm like, oh, back in my day, we had to manage our own memory. And then we were blessed with the garbage collector in .NET. And someone's like, I literally don't know what you're talking about or care about what you're saying. Like, I just need to be able to stitch these things together because that's what software development looks like. I want to make sure that I'm staying with it. So this is why I'm telling you, I'm trying to keep an open mind when I navigate this stuff. So the over-reliance part, I think, is interesting with respect to how we leverage tools because, like I said, I've already had an over-reliance my entire development career on different tools before AI. And when it comes to learning, I'm genuinely curious if that evolves. I can't see the obvious path to what I was saying. And I don't know if that's because I don't want to see it or it's not yet presenting itself. So I think those are the thoughts I have on that. But I hope, I don't know, if you were kind of sticking along through that with me, I hope you found it an interesting exercise to like try and challenge yourself to think about things in a different way. I'll repeat it because I don't want you to hate me too much. My goal is not to tell you like any of those things are truths, right? I don't know. I have literally no idea. But these are some of the things I'm thinking about because I want to try and keep an open mind as data starts to show. And that way I'm not totally caught off guard. So this topic aside, this is the kind of thing that I would recommend you try and do to take on different perspectives and think through them. From an engineering perspective, I think that it can absolutely make you a stronger engineer. The reason I say that is because engineering is a lot about analysis, okay? And you might have a very strong opinion about something, say for a design, an architecture, and you propose it, and then you come up against someone else who has a very strong opinion, and guess what? It's different. Now what? You fight to the death, you Pokemon battle to see whose design gets taken. No, you're going to have a conversation about it. And I think what's really fascinating is that we can be in these situations and have differences of opinions. And if we take the time to try and understand the other side, you might not agree with them still. You might say, like, I still think my design's better. But if you try to put yourself in their position, think about what they're doing, and try to extract pieces of why they're doing things a certain way, you might uncover gaps in what you're doing. They might have said, hey, I structured it this way because it's going to address latency in these situations. And you might go, oh shit, like, yeah, like that was a thing that we talked about that, and like that's not addressed in my design, but I wonder, can I now compensate my design in an elegant way to address that? So it's not about, when we're trying to do this kind of thing, it's not about who has the right perspective. That's ultimately what I'm trying to say here. It's not like one perspective's ultimately right, another one's ultimately wrong. There's bits of truth scattered in all of these things. And I think that it's like one of the really cool things about engineering is being able to do the analysis and kind of extract those truths, right? We can have different opinions. We can have different perspectives. Once we start having data, how do we extract those truths and start building systems leveraging that? So that's why I recommend doing these types of exercises. You'll also find, from a soft skills perspective, because we can't not talk about soft skills. If you do this kind of thing more regularly, you will find that you're having less confrontation with people and less friction, at least from your side. They might not do the same thing, but at least you're not going to be like, oh man, like here's Johnny again with his stupid designs. Like Johnny's always got dumb ideas. No, you might not agree with Johnny's ideas, but if you go look at them and understand his perspective more, you might be able to extract more value than just dismissing them. So that's what I got to say about that topic. AI, fun stuff. I'll see you next time.